Hello class. Today we are going to start with the unit 1 of your subject Fundamentals of Microcontroller Applications. The first unit basically deals with the introduction to concept of microcontroller, its comparison with the microprocessor and microcontroller, and the architecture, the registers that are required to be used and everything. So we'll see uh, the syllabus for the unit 1. It deals with the concept of microcontroller, and the controller that we are going to see look into the detail is your Intel 8051. We have to go with the functional block diagram of it, the pin diagram of the 8051, understand the memory organization of 8051, the various registers, the supporting register, the program status word, and the stack pointer. Those registers we have to understand, and finally we'll understand the special function registers, which are there uh, for programming these special applications, which we'll be seeing in the next units, in the upcoming units. And at the end we'll see few instructions and how we can program in an assembly language. So that is in last part of the unit. But before we go into much detail, we'll start with the basics. We'll understand the microprocessor, what is the microprocessor, and how microcontroller is different than the microprocessor. And then we'll understand the architecture. So for this lecture, we'll be mainly focusing on to the basics that are required to understand this unit. Okay, so we'll go with one by one. The objective of this unit, the unit 1, is to understand the microcontroller architecture and describe the features of the typical microcontroller, that is your 8051. And at the end of this this unit, we are supposed to describe the architecture and the features of the various types of the microcontrollers, not just the 8051. Okay. So that is what we are supposed to learn at the end of this unit. Okay. So we'll start with the basics first. First, just understand what is microcontroller. Microcontroller is a VLSI integrated circuit that contains the electronic computing unit and the logic unit, that is your CPU. We normally call it as a CPU, the central processing unit. Along with that, it has the memory. There are both memories available, the program memory and the data memory. Normally you might have heard the word RAM and ROM. So those are the two memories available with us. Then we have the I/O ports, that stands for the input and output ports. These are required to have a physical connection with the outside world. If you want to send some data, get it from some application, and by performing some computations onto it, we have to accordingly provide it onto the output screen, or let's suppose any application. So for that purpose, we required some physical connection between the outside world and the microcontroller, and that is done through these ports. These are called as the input and the output ports, and there are a few other components integrated on this single chip. Okay, so that is why it is also called as an computer on a chip or a single chip computer, because it has everything on one single chip, on one integrated circuit. So it is also called as an embedded controller. So the applications, if we look about the microcontroller, so the microcontrollers are everywhere there in our daily routine. We have microcontrollers around us in many applications. Like if we talk about automobiles, for the purpose of engine control and for controlling the additional systems, there are microcontrollers. For your consumer electronics, like the digital cameras, the video cam recorders, CD DVD players, washing machines, even the ovens, they also have the microcontrollers. They send some data, and then accordingly they provide you the output. Then you have the testing and the measuring equipments, like the multimeters, the oscilloscopes, function generators. They also have the microcontrollers. They sense the voltage or the current, whichever parameter we are working with, and according to that values it provides the output. And the mostly which we regularly use along with the computers are the printers, the routers, modems, and the keyboards. They also sense a particular position. When you are using a keyboard, we have to type it onto the screen, so the position sensing is done there, and then you type, then you provide a data, a letter or a character. So there also how it is done, it is done through the microcontrollers only. So the basic question comes into mind that how these microcontrollers came into existence, and why it was felt that microcontrollers were required. So earlier we had the microprocessors. The microprocessors, or the invention of it, was the turning point in the computation field. Okay, so they made the computation job much easier. The microprocessors is again nothing but an integrated circuit, but it contains the central processing unit, that is your CPU. So the microprocessor has a disadvantage. We can say that it needs the supporting hardware along with it, like that, the memory, the peripheral devices, all these hardware devices to be connected externally with the microprocessor. So this provides you the benefit of computation, the heavy computation that you cannot do manually, that can be done with the microprocessor. That was an advantage with it. But later on it was understood that not only the computation is what is required, but we also need to have a control mechanism. So when this was realized, it was required to develop a device which would give you a controlling, much more efficient controlling. So the microcontrollers came into picture, and the advantage they provide is that they require the less hardware to make a complete computer system, because it has everything on chip. So if I could compare it, the microprocessor and the microcontroller, as I can see with the pictorial representation of it, see the microprocessor, it has a central processing unit, the CPU with it, and the peripherals, the external memory, the peripherals, the timer, the serial communication port, everything is connected external to the CPU through the data bus and the address bus. And against that, the microcontroller, if you could see, it has everything mounted on chip: the CPU, RAM, the memory, RAM and ROM, the IO ports, the timers, the serial communication port. All of these components are mounted onto the single chip only. So it has given us an advantage of, in terms of space, in terms of a reduction in the mounting space, right? So that was an advantage. And the biggest advantage with microcontroller is that it provides the controlling mechanism. Okay, so let's just understand the basic components of the microcontroller. The basic components of the microcontroller are the central processing unit, which is the heart of the microcontroller, that is there. Along with that, it has a program memory, which we normally call as a ROM, the read-only memory. There is a data memory, which we call it as a random access memory, that is your RAM. Then there is a clock generator. Clock generator is an device, is an integrated part of your microcontroller, which is required to have a synchronism with the program's execution, with the instruction executions, and having a synchronism with the applications. So clock pulses are there everywhere in the microcontroller. So clock generator is required for that purpose. Then there are ports, the input ports and the output ports. These are, as I said, is required to have a physical connection with the outside world. So we'll see one by one in detail all these components. The central processing unit, it is the heart of the microcontroller. Why it is heart of the microcontroller? Because it comprises of the arithmetic logic unit and the control unit. So they perform a job of both the arithmetic operations and the controlling operations. So ALU, the arithmetic logic unit, is the one which is responsible to have the arithmetic and logical operations. And the control unit is the one which is responsible for the timing of the communication process between the CPU and its peripherals. Okay, so that is why it is called as the heart of the microcontroller. Then there is a program memory. We have seen it. That is your ROM. This is a read-only memory. Why it is called as read-only memory? Because once the program return into it, it will be retained even when the power is down. Okay, so that is why it is also called as a non-volatile memory, because the program does not get vanished once the power is down. So that remains there in the memory itself. So that is why it is called as a read-only memory. So in that we have now the modern program memory modules, which are EEPROM, which we call as EEPROM. It stands for the electrically erasable programmable read-only memory. So when we say electrically erasable, it means that the data or the program that is there in this memory, it can be erased out and it can be reprogrammed with the special instruction. Okay, so that is an advantage with the EEPROM memories. So when the microcontroller is powered up, the processor always executes a set of instructions from a predefined memory locations. This is sometimes called as the booting process also. So that is done through this read-only memory, which is also a non-volatile memory. Then the second one is a data memory, which we call as RAM, the random access memory. It is a volatile memory. Why it is in volatile? When you say volatile, it means that something gets vanished out, or so when the power is down, your PC or your laptop, if it gets shut down, then the anything that is there in this data memory, that gets vanished out. So that is why it is called as the volatile memory. So it stores the temporary data, the variables and the intermediate results that have been developed during the execution of a program. So that is the data memory. It is basically organized as the registers that include both the special function registers, which are defined for the special applications, which are defined with special purpose, and there is in general purpose registers, which we can use for the arithmetic operations or for the general applications. So those are there. So we'll see the when we'll go with the detail into this unit, we'll see the memory organization, and there we'll understand what these registers are and how they are placed and how they are utilized. So that is your data memory, which is a volatile memory. Always remember this one, volatile memory, because the data gets vanished out once the power is down. Then there are the IO ports. Like I said it, that it is these are required to have a physical connection with the outside world. So the input ports are the one that collects the data from the outside world with the help of the sensors, and the output are the one which provide the data to the output application, or it provides it to the external devices like the motors or the LEDs. Like suppose if for example I take an air conditioner. So air conditioner monitors the temperature of the room, and once it senses that the temperature is above the set limit, it again it cools down the room and it takes back the temperature to the defined limit. So the input ports are the one which would sense the temperature of the room, and then it will do some kind of operation onto it, and then it will provide the cooled temperature at the output side, right? So that is done through the input and the output ports. Always remember, the input ports are the one that collects the data, then there is some processing done onto that data, and then that is being provided to the output ports to the application, whichever it is connected to it. Then the clock generator. The clock pulses are required everywhere in the microcontroller for the execution of the instruction, for the communication between the CPU and the external devices. So clock pulses are required everywhere. Clock pulses basically define the speed of the program. They define the execution speed of your program. So these are required everywhere. At times there is a requirement to have an additional timing circuit along with it. So the clock generator, it is an integrated part of microcontroller, but along with that an additional timing circuit is also used in the form of the crystal along with the microcontroller. So now let's see the architecture of the microcontroller. So we have seen all the components of the microcontroller, the basic components in the microcontroller. So the way in which these memories are communicating with each other, like we have seen there are two memories in the program, in the microcontroller, that is in RAM and the ROM, the random access memory and the read-only memory. So basically the way in which these two memories communicate with each other, or they communicate with CPU, the external devices, that is defined as the architecture of the microcontroller. So if you could see, there are two architectures available with us. The one is a von Neumann and the second one is a Harvard architecture. Now these are named so on the basis of the scientists who have developed these architectures. So they are named under the name of the scientist. So the von Neumann architecture is the one where you can easily see that the ROM and the RAM, they are placed in the same memory space. So there is no separation between the ROM and the RAM. And if I could see into the Harvard architecture, so here you can see that there is a ROM, the program ROM, and there is an RAM. The register space is there. So these two memories are placed in different space. So that is an Harvard architecture. When the ROM and the RAM, they have the different space, then it is the Harvard architecture. If the ROM and the RAM does not have a separate space, then that is an von Neumann architecture. So what is the advantage and the disadvantage we can make out from the architecture itself? If suppose you have a same memory space for the ROM and the RAM, what would be the advantage? If suppose my program size gets exceeded, so in the RAM, when we are working into the random access memory, if I require more space and if there is a vacant space available in the ROM, we can utilize that space, right? Because we have that space available with us, which is not utilized by the read-only memory. So that is an advantage, that at times you can use the read-only memory space for the random access memory, and similarly you can use the space of the RAM for the ROM purpose. Right? So vice versa, you can use it for both way, because the memory space is same, which is shared for both the read-only memory and the random access memory. But against that, if we could go with the Harvard architecture, if suppose the space is available with the ROM, you cannot use it for the purpose of random access memory. And the vice versa, if there is space available in the random access memory, you cannot use it for the read-only memory purpose, because the space is separately provided for it. So they have their own pros and cons for this architecture. So according to our requirement, we can select it that way. So because of this, what happens is it requires less space. The von Neumann architecture requires less space. Harvard requires more space, but it provides you the faster execution, because in case of Harvard architecture, since there is a ROM and RAM separately provided, so we can have the data and the address execution simultaneously. But in case of von Neumann, we cannot have the simultaneous operation, because there is only one path provided for the data and the address. Okay, so there are the pros and cons for these these architecture. So let's just see it in detail. If I could go with the Harvard architecture and von Neumann architecture, if we look at the arrangement, so we have seen that CPU is connected with the both RAM and ROM separately in case of Harvard architecture. But with von Neumann, there is no separate data and program memory. Instead, only a single memory connection is given to the CPU. This was the basic, we can say, a difference between the Harvard and the von Neumann architecture. Again, then if we look at the hardware requirement, so we can easily make out that the von Neumann requires the less hardware, because there is a common memory that needs to be reached. But in case of Harvard architecture, we require more hardware, because there are two different memory spaces, the data memory space and the address memory space, which needs to be reached, right? Then the space requirement, on the basis of this above 2 points, we can easily make out that the Harvard is the one which requires more space, and the von Neumann is the one which requires less space. Okay, so that is an we can say is an point, or a point need to be taken care of depending on our application. If our application requires more space, or it requires a slower operation or a faster operation, so that way we have to decide which architecture we have to follow. Then if we talk about the speed of execution, the Harvard provides you the faster speed of execution. Why? Because it has a separate data bus and the address bus. So that means we can access the data and the address simultaneously. But in case of von Neumann, there is a common memory or a common bus provided, so we cannot have the data and the address simultaneously. So von Neumann provides the slower operation or the slower speed of execution. Okay, so the space usage, as we have seen the space requirement, Harvard requires more space, so that actually results in the wastage of space. Von Neumann, we have seen that it requires less space, so that means the space is being utilized efficiently, that is, the space is not wasted. and the last one is controlling how we are performing. So in case of Harvard, since two memories are there, two memories needs to be reached, so that provides you a bit complex controlling mechanism. But with von Neumann, we have a simpler controlling mechanism. So these are the point of comparison between the Harvard and the von Neumann architecture. Depending on the application and depending on our requirement, we can make a choice of which architecture we have to follow. So in your syllabus, the unit 1 or in your syllabus, we are going to mainly focus on to the 8051 microcontroller. So the 8051 microcontroller follows the Harvard architecture. This we have to remember. We'll see it in the detail when we'll understand the architecture of 8051 and the block diagram of 8051. There you can easily make out that it is following the Harvard architecture. And just remember that this point, that 8051 follows the Harvard architecture. So in market there are many microcontrollers available other than 8051. Since we are given an 8051 into our syllabus, so we are going to go into much detail with this one. But other than that, there are other microcontrollers available. As per the manufacturer, there are 80 AVR, then you have an ATX Mega, 80 Mega 328P, then there is PIC 18F, which are the products of Microchip. Then you have the Arduino and the ARM processors are also available there. But 8051, why it is important to understand 8051 rather than going for the any other microcontroller? Because 8051 is a basic microcontroller. If you could understand the 8051, the datasheet, how to read the datasheet, how to understand the architecture, how the instructions gets executed, if we understand this microcontroller, it is understood that you can understand other microcontrollers as well. It makes your job simpler to understand other microcontrollers because they are much more related with each other, the operations. What only would vary is the size of the memory size of the microcontroller, the ports, the number of ports available with the microcontroller, the clock frequency, the quartz crystal. These are the some of the variations would be there with the microcontrollers, but we have to understand the basics of it first, and for that reason we are mainly going to go into detail with the 8051 first. First we'll understand 8051, and then in your next year we'll go with the PIC microcontrollers, and slowly we'll go into the advanced version of it, right? So that is the reason why we are going into detail of 8051 only. So in the next lectures, we'll go into detail with the architecture of 8051, the features of 8051, and then later on we'll understand the memory organization of it. So that's all for today's lecture. If you have any doubt, you can get back to me. Thank you.